Good morning. As we begin our time of worship, we begin with an acknowledgement of the land where we worship, recognizing that you may be in a different place that may involve different people. The point of a land acknowledgement is to recognize that people have been here for thousands and thousands of years, and that we are the most recent people living on this land. As we gather for worship here at Runnymede United Church, we acknowledge that the land where Runnymede United Church stands is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Petun First Nations. We pray that God will keep us all mindful of broken covenants and guide us in our strive to make right relations with all people. We are grateful to have our church in this place. Good morning and welcome on this Christmas Day. It feels a little strange to welcome people when we're not here in the sanctuary together, but I welcome you to this time that we have together. And we are grateful that all of our support people and tech people and all of the people who have been involved with so many services through the Christmas season are able to be with their families today and able to have some rest. This is a time of worship where we are joined as God's people, although remotely, we are joined as a community, and this is a blessed and wonderful time that we have. I hope that your celebrations are rich and that this is a part of your joy.
Good morning. We are the Mather Exile family, and we're here to do a reading. As we open our time of worship, we begin by lighting our candles.
You may wish to find and light a candle in your own home. Whether or not you do, you know that this light is for you.
We light our Advent candles, which symbolize the hope, peace, joy, and love of this season.
And we light our Christ candle as we celebrate the birth of Jesus and Christ's presence with us in worship.
The light of Christ, thanks be to God.
The light of the candle is flame of Christ's light, the sign of this congregation to reverend ministry, and our commitment to love everybody. The light of love and justice. Thanks be to God.
Hello and Merry Christmas. For our opening prayer today, we're going to do a hot chocolate prayer, which is especially fun if there are some young people watching the service who want to watch the service with a cup of hot chocolate. And because this is a video, you are welcome to simply pause it right now and gather the things you'll need for this hot chocolate prayer. And those are cocoa, sugar, some kind of sweetener, a pinch of salt, and some milk. So the way this prayer goes is that first we're going to start by measuring 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. And at this point in the prayer, you're just going to taste a tiny bit of cocoa. And you'll taste that it's bitter. And take a moment to pray for some of the things that are bitter in your life and a little hard to take on their own. And then the next ingredient is our sweetener. You can use a different spoon if you're more meticulous than me. And we'll measure out a tablespoon or however much sugar you want in your hot chocolate. And you'll taste the sugar, which is sweet. And take this moment to pray and give thanks for some of the sweet things in your life. The next thing that we will add is our salt, just a little pinch of salt. And you can taste that salt. It is salty. And now offer a prayer for the grace and clarity that brings out the flavors in life. And we can add that to our mug. And then with your warm milk, add that as well. And stir it all together while reflecting on the experience of the holy that you've had in your life and what has warmed your heart. And so once you have your hot chocolate all stirred together, you can finally take a sip of that and give thanks to God for the way that all of these different elements of life come together. Amen.
Good morning. It's my great pleasure to talk about one of my favorite carols, which is What Child Is This? The history of this carol goes quite far back. The text goes back several hundred years by William Chatterton Dix, who was an English carol and hymn writer. He's also represented by As With Gladness Men of Old, another Christmas carol that speaks specifically about the arrival of the kings and the Epiphany story. But the melody goes much farther back into an English folk song that's at least 500 years old. We're not quite sure. In fact, there's some talk that perhaps it was actually written by Henry VIII, the King of England, to his wife Anne Boleyn. In the text of the original song, Green Sleeves, it talks about women of various dress colors, including one with green sleeves, and the thought that perhaps he had written this to his wife Anne Boleyn. But regardless, the tone is a beautiful English folk song melody, and folk songs have been a great inspiration for hymn writers over the years. And for me, What Child Is This has always been a very haunting and kind of beguiling song because of the way that the music moves throughout it. The verse that we start off with in What Child Is This is in what we call a minor, or perhaps a sad or scary or perhaps darker feel to it, which to me always represented what the world would have been like perhaps before Jesus came, remembering that God sent his son to save the world from whatever it was in at that time. So, and then as we move to the chorus where we sing, this is Christ the King, it moves into that major or happier feeling to it, which for me has always been that beautiful transition from darkness into light, from minor into major, and to feeling that source of inspiration. And then as we move to the next verse, and the text of course covers not just the arrival of the shepherds, but also the arrival of the kings, that darkness from which they've been in, seeking the light and coming into that beautiful stable to the lightness that would have surrounded the birth of Jesus. Always had this beautiful movement and sense of wonder as we moved into that happier and more exhilarating chorus. Another point of musical geekdom perhaps, but is always a question on what to do at the end, because in the original carol or in the original folk melody, the final chord of the very happy or lighter chorus is usually a minor chord, which takes us back into the verse of the next section. And there is a musical technique called the tierce de Picardie, which is when you take something that is in a minor or a sadder kind of sounding, and at the very end, in order to keep everybody happy at the end, it resolves into a major or happy chord. And there's always a great point of debate on whether we should use the tierce de Picardie to keep everybody happy, or should we keep that sense of mystery, perhaps that sense of unexpected surprise ending, perhaps. So you'll have to listen to hear our version of this to know whether we decided to go with the happier or perhaps with a more traditional sound. What Child Is This has always been a really inspiring carol for me. It's quite simple in its message, but the music has always lifted that message up and provided an extra layer of thought and something to ponder during this season.
This is a reading from the Hebrew Scriptures, Psalm 98. Sing to Jehovah with a new song, for God has done marvelous things. With their right hand and holy arm have they won the victory. Jehovah has made known their victory. Their righteousness they have openly shown in the sight of the nations. God remembers their mercy and faithfulness to the house of Israel, and all the ends of the earth have seen the victory of our God. Shout with joy to Jehovah. All you lands, lift up your voice, rejoice and sing. Sing to Jehovah with the harp and the voice of a song. With trumpets and the sound of the horn, shout with joy before the ruler Jehovah. Let the sea make a noise and all that is in it, the lands and all who dwell therein. Let the rivers clap their hands, and let the hills ring out with joy before Jehovah, when God comes to judge the earth. In righteousness shall God judge the world, and the peoples with equity.
I'll always remember that tinkling sound of the bells at the church and helping the little angels with the choreography for the angel dance, and them coming down the aisle, waving their little wings with the little halos on their heads. It was precious. That song I will never forget. I will always think of the dancing angels at Runnymede Christmas pageant.
John 1, verses 1 to 14. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being with him, in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overtake it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him. Yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believeth in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood, or of the will of the flesh, or the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Thanks be to God.
Hi, I'm Allie. Some of you might know me already or have seen me around. I grew up at Runnymede United. One of my favorite times to be in the church is actually at night. The church at night reminds me of Easter and Christmas choir rehearsals, of the carols by candlelight and the Christmas Eve services, of meeting with Kenya Youth before our 2019 trip to Kenya, and of fundraising events and shows. I was a preteen who would go to a Friday night youth group, and I remember countless times running through the pitch dark sanctuary, hiding between pews, terrified that some soldier would find me and put me in jail. The soldiers being obviously other youth group members, and the jail just being a bunch of chairs in Memorial Hall. The sanctuary at night just seems so magic and hushed and holy to me, especially during the Christmas season. Before I sang in the Christmas choir, I would sit up in the loft with my dad while he helped run sound for the Christmas Eve service. The 11 p.m. service typically ends in Silent Night being sung by candlelight. It was and still is my favorite part in the whole service. The lights go off and the music starts, and light is passed from seat to seat, lighting up the whole church below. Someone would always remember to run up the light to the loft to make sure that everybody in the loft would get some light as well. When I was young, passing candlelight meant just pretty lights and playing with fire, which felt pretty risque at church. But as I've gotten older, I've started to see it as this connection between friends and loved ones and strangers. It takes a second to pass the light to your neighbor, but in a minute, the whole church is lit up. It's something so small that sparks something so impactful if we pass it along. Silent Night always reminds me of the sanctuary all lit up, of keeping the light beautiful and alive and reflecting on a holy night. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Merry Christmas.
Oh
There are many gifts that are given as a part of the ministry of Runnymede United Church. Runnymede is supported financially very generously, but also generously by the time and talent that people give in service of one another and in sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. Let us now pray for God's blessing on all of the offerings that we make. Holy God, we pray that you bless our offerings, that all that we give and all that we receive comes from you and returns to you a portion of the blessings that we have been given. We pray that you guide all that we do, that we help to further the work of your church in this world. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Let us join our hearts and go together to God in prayer. Gracious and loving God, Creator of all, wherever we may be this day, whomever we may be sharing this time with, we pray that you guide us and bless us. We give thanks for friends and family that make this day and this time special, for the wonder and amazement of the birth of a child, the birth of the Christ child that brought so much hope and goodness to this world. We pray for those who are struggling in this time, those who are unwell, those in care facilities, those in hospital, for your presence with them. And we pray for those that work this day to care for others, that they are blessed for all that they give. We pray for those who are struggling with families, with relationships, for comfort, and that all are able to find joy in some way. And we pray for those who are lonely, that they feel your presence with them, and they know that they are not alone, but they are part of a community, and that if they reach out, they will receive comfort. We pray that in all places in this world where Christmas Day has silenced weapons of war, that silence will continue, that better ways of being will be found, that leaders will work for peace. And as we look to a year ahead, we pray for your blessing on us, that we will be lifted by the light of the Christ child. The star that led so many to Bethlehem will lead us and guide us to do good works in your name. We pray that you bless this time of worship and bless all that we do as we say together the prayer that Jesus taught us to say. Holy God, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Hi everyone, I have just a few announcements to share with you today. And the first is about our Advent projects, our spirit warming tree, and our Advent food drive. At the end of the season, we tallied all those things up and we had 14 boxes full of different kinds of food to donate to our neighbors at the sharing place. And as well from our spirit warming tree, I've received a more precise breakdown, so I'll let you know that we had 36 pairs of socks and tights, 2 pairs of slippers, 5 hats and scarf sets, 22 scarves, 27 hats, 2 earmuffs, 32 pairs of mitts and gloves, and 1 hand-knit child's pullover. And so thanks very much to everyone who contributed to those projects, and thanks to Laurie and Mary who organized them. The folks at the Sharing Place were very happy to receive all of those donations. The next announcement is a reminder that next week on New Year's Day, we will also worship remotely in the same way with a pre-recorded video. There will be no in-person worship on that day, but we will look forward to gathering again in our typical way online and in person on January 8th. The next announcement, and the final one I'll share for now, is that we are having a conversation on Tuesday, January 3rd at 7 p.m. in the Kingsbury Room to continue discussions about our community meal. We plan to restart our community meal sometime early in the new year, sometime within the next month or so, and so we are going to have that meeting to start to discuss some of the logistics that we need to put in place to get that initiative up and running. So if you're interested in being involved with that or would like to come to join the conversation for any reason, please do come on January 3rd at 7 p.m.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mara Nickerson. Go Tell It on the Mountain has always been one of my favorite Christmas carols. When my sister and I were growing up, we always sang in school and church choirs together, and I always particularly loved the Christmas concerts and services, and Go Tell It on the Mountain was usually included, perhaps as a counterpart to some of the more quiet and somber carols. When my children were little, I sang them to sleep every night and included hymns no matter what the time of year, such as The Lord is My Shepherd, Away in a Manger, and go tell it on the mountain. Recently, I was very touched when my son just had his first child, and he was able to sing some of those songs to him, word perfect. Go Tell It on the Mountain, I think, is one of my favorites because it is so joyous and represents the celebratory nature of Christmas. It embodies the message of Christ's birth. Down in a lowly manger, the humble Christ was born and brought us all salvation that blessed Christmas morn. And then, of course, it reminds us as Christians to go out and share that message. Shout it from the rooftops. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. And everyone loves that chorus, and everyone knows it and chimes in and sings it loudly. Even my husband, who will admit he can't carry a tune, he knows the words to that one and sings along when it comes on. So I hope all of you will join in and have a joyous Merry Christmas.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this service. Runnymede United wishes you a very Merry Christmas. May the grace of Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the friendship of the Holy Spirit be with you now this Christmas time and always. Amen.